Danny Cole was running late for his break, and that was the beginning of all his troubles. He worked as a cargo handler on Nexus Station, a massive orbital trading hub where hundreds of alien species came to do business. Humanity had only joined the galactic community 5 years ago, and most aliens still looked at humans like they were nothing special. Danny was fine with that. He kept his head down, did his work, and sent money back to his family on Earth. That was enough for him. The corridors of Nexus Station were always crowded during the midday cycle. Aliens of every shape and size moved through the halls. Some had scales, some had fur, some had bodies that Danny could not even describe. He had learned to navigate through them quickly. His break was only 30 minutes and the food court was on the other side of the station. He turned a corner too fast. His shoulder connected with something solid and cold. He heard a sharp sound of glass breaking and liquid splashing on the metal floor. Danny stumbled back and looked up at what he had hit. She was tall, at least 7 feet, with skin as pale as fresh snow. Her eyes were the color of blood, and they stared down at him with an expression that made his stomach drop. She wore dark robes that seemed to absorb the light around her. In her hand was the broken stem of what had been a beautiful crystal glass. The red liquid that had been inside was now spreading across the floor like a stain. The entire corridor went silent. Every alien nearby stopped moving. Some of them actually started backing away with fear on their faces. Danny did not understand why until he noticed the symbol on her robes. It was the mark of the collective. Danny had heard stories about every human on the station had. They were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, powerful beyond measure, and they fed on the life essence of other beings. Most species called them vampires, though they found that term insulting. They were considered galactic nobility. Kings and emperors sought their approval. Entire civilizations had been destroyed for offending them. And Danny had just knocked a drink out of one of their hands. The woman looked at the broken glass, then at the puddle on the floor, then back at Danny. Her lips parted slightly and he could see fangs behind them. When she spoke, her voice was soft, but it carried through the silent corridor like thunder. "Do you wish to die, human?" Danny felt his heart pounding in his chest. His hands were shaking. Every instinct told him to run, to beg, to do something. But running would not help. Begging would probably make things worse. He had seen enough aliens on this station to know that predator species despised weakness. So Danny did the only thing that felt right to him. He took a breath and bowed his head. "I am very sorry," he said. "That was completely my fault. I was not watching where I was going. Please let me replace your drink." The woman tilted her head. Her red eyes narrowed slightly as if she was trying to understand something confusing. Around them, the other aliens watched in stunned silence. A small creature with blue fur whispered to its companion that the human had lost his mind. "You wish to replace it," the woman repeated slowly. "Yes," Danny said. "Whatever it was, I will pay for a new one. It might take me a while to save up the money, but I will do it." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised everyone watching. She laughed. It was not a cruel laugh or a mocking one. It sounded almost like genuine amusement. "That drink," she said, "was a ceremonial blend prepared by the monks of Prime. It takes 40 years to ferment. A single glass is worth more than you will earn in your entire lifetime." Danny felt the blood drain from his face. He had made a terrible mistake, but he forced himself to stay calm. Panic would not help him now. "Then I will work to repay the debt in whatever way I can," he said. The woman studied him with those crimson eyes. She seemed to be looking for something in his face. Fear, perhaps, deception, anything that would tell her what kind of creature stood before her, but Danny just looked back at her and waited. "I am Lady Seraphine of the Collective," she said finally, "and you have interrupted a sacred ritual with your clumsiness. The traditional penalty for such an offense is death." Danny swallowed hard but did not look away. "However," Seraphine continued, I find myself curious about you. Most prey species would be crying or running by now. You stand there offering to make things right as if you have any power to do so. It is either very brave or very stupid." "Probably stupid," Danny admitted. Seraphine's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. "Honest as well. How unusual." She stepped closer to him, and Danny had to fight every instinct not to step back. She smelled like old flowers and something metallic. Her presence seemed to press against him like a physical weight. "I will not kill you today, human," she said. "Instead, you will serve as my attendant during my time on this station. 1 standard month. You will attend to my needs, follow my commands, and learn what it means to owe a debt to the. At the end of that time, if you have served well, I will consider your debt paid." Danny knew he should feel relieved. He was being offered his life when he had expected death. But he also knew that serving was dangerous. Many servants did not survive the experience. They were known for draining those who displeased them. But what choice did he have? "I accept," Danny said. Seraphine nodded as if she had expected nothing else. She turned and began walking down the corridor. After 3 steps, she paused and looked back at him. "Come, human, your service begins now." Danny looked at the puddle of ceremonial wine on the floor, then at the faces of the aliens who had watched everything happen. Most of them looked at him with pity. A few looked at him with something like respect. One old merchant with gray scales shook his head slowly, as if watching a man walk to his own funeral. Danny took a deep breath and followed Lady Seraphine into the unknown. He did not know what the next month would bring. He did not know if he would survive it, but he knew one thing for certain. He had made a mistake, and he would face the consequences like a man. That was simply how Danny Cole was built. The first 3 days of service were the hardest. Danny learned quickly that Lady Seraphine was not an easy master to please. She woke at strange hours, ate meals that made his stomach turn, and expected absolute silence unless she asked him to speak. Her quarters on Nexus Station were dark and cold, kept at temperatures that made Danny shiver even in his thickest jacket. Other aliens on the station warned him whenever they got the chance. A merchant from the system pulled him aside on the 2nd day and whispered that he should run while he still had blood in his veins. A cleaning drone operator told him that the last servant on this station had been found empty, drained of every drop of life essence, left as nothing but a dried husk. Danny listened to all of them and thanked them for their concern, but he did not run. Seraphine seemed to be waiting for him to flee. Every morning when he arrived at her quarters, she looked almost surprised to see him. On the 4th day, she finally asked him about it. "The others have told you what I am," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," Danny replied. "They have told you what happens to those who serve my kind." "Yes." "And yet you return each day. You stand there waiting for instructions as if I were any other employer. Why?" Danny thought about the question carefully before answering. "Because I made a mistake and I said I would make it right. Running away would not change that. It would just make me a coward and a liar on top of being clumsy." Seraphine studied him with those blood-red eyes. She did this often, watching him as if he were some strange creature she had never encountered before. Perhaps to her, he was exactly that. "You are either the bravest human I have ever met," she said, "or the most foolish. My mother always said those 2 things were closer than most people think." Seraphine made a sound that might have been a laugh. Then she handed him a list of tasks and said nothing more. As the days passed, Danny began to understand his duties. He was responsible for preparing her quarters, arranging her meetings, and ensuring that her needs were met throughout the day. The work itself was not difficult. What was difficult was the constant presence of death that hung around her like perfume. Seraphine was on Nexus Station for diplomatic reasons. The collective was negotiating a peace treaty with the Federation, a species they had been in cold conflict with for over 300 years. Danny did not understand the politics involved, but he understood that it was important. Ambassadors and diplomats came and went from Seraphine's quarters at all hours. What Danny noticed most was how alone Seraphine seemed. Others on the station treated her with respect, but they kept their distance. They bowed when she passed and spoke to her with formal words, but there was no warmth in any of it. Danny had worked in enough places to recognize office politics when he saw them. Seraphine was powerful, but she was also isolated. He did not ask about it. It was not his place. On the 10th day, Seraphine tried to frighten him. She moved across the room faster than his eyes could follow and appeared directly in front of him, her fangs fully extended, her eyes glowing with an inner light. Danny's heart nearly stopped. His body screamed at him to run, to fight, to do something. But he stood his ground. His hands shook and his breath came fast, but he did not move. "Are you not afraid?" Seraphine asked, her voice a whisper against his ear. "I am terrified," Danny admitted. "Then why do you not run?" "Because you have not told me I could leave yet, and because running from fear has never solved any of my problems." Seraphine stepped back and looked at him with an expression he could not read. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then she nodded slowly and returned to her seat as if nothing had happened. "Bring me the documents from the ambassador," she said. "We have much work to do today." Danny went to fetch the documents. His hands did not stop shaking for an hour. The second week brought changes that Danny did not expect. Seraphine began talking to him more. Not about important things, but about small matters. She asked him about human food and seemed amused by his descriptions of pizza and hamburgers. She asked him about Earth and listened carefully as he described blue skies and green forests and oceans that went on forever. "Your world sounds very alive," she said one evening. "It is," Danny agreed. "Humans sometimes forget that, but it is. There was like that once, before we changed, before we became what we are now." Danny wanted to ask what she meant, but something in her voice told him not to push. Instead, he simply nodded and continued his work. On the 15th day, Danny made a mistake with her schedule. He accidentally booked 2 meetings at the same time, forcing Seraphine to reschedule with a diplomat who took the change as an insult. Danny expected punishment. He expected anger at the very least. Instead, Seraphine simply looked at him and said, "Fix it." So Danny fixed it. He tracked down the diplomat, apologized personally, and offered to serve as a messenger between the two parties to make up for the inconvenience. The diplomat was surprised that a human would take such responsibility. By the end of the day, the problem was solved, and the diplomat seemed more friendly toward the delegation than before. When Danny reported his success to Seraphine, she looked at him for a long time without speaking. "You take responsibility for your errors," she said finally. "You do not make excuses or blame others. You simply fix what you have broken." "That is how I was raised," Danny said. "It is how all beings should be raised, yet so few are." That night, for the first time, Seraphine invited Danny to sit with her while she ate. He did not eat anything himself. The diet was not something humans could stomach, but he sat across from her and they talked. She told him about the negotiations and how frustrated she was with the slow progress. He told her about his family back on Earth and how he hoped to save enough money to bring them to the station someday. It was not friendship. Danny was not foolish enough to think that, but it was something more than master and servant. It was 2 beings from different worlds finding small pieces of common ground. As Danny walked back to his quarters that night, he realized something strange. He was no longer counting the days until his service ended. He was simply living them, one at a time, and finding meaning in each one. Perhaps that was the most human thing he could do. The 18th day began like any other. Danny arrived at Seraphine's quarters before the station lights switched to day cycle. He prepared her morning arrangements, organized her schedule, and set out the reports she would need for her meetings. Everything was routine. Then everything changed. Danny was walking through the lower corridors of the diplomatic wing to deliver a message when he heard voices coming from a storage room. The door was slightly open, and he would have walked past without thinking if he had not heard one word that made him stop. Human. He pressed himself against the wall and listened. Two voices were speaking in low tones. They were, he could tell by the clicking sounds between their words. "The attack will happen during the final ceremony," the first voice said. "Lady will be in the open, surrounded by witnesses, perfect conditions." "And the humans?" the second voice asked. "We have prepared evidence that will point to human extremists. Their weapons, their communication devices, everything will be left behind. The galaxy will believe that humans attacked the delegation. They will demand blood, and the humans will be pushed out of galactic society forever. Two problems solved with one strike." Danny felt his blood run cold. They were planning to kill Seraphine. They were planning to blame it on humanity. If they succeeded, everything his species had worked for would be destroyed. Humans would be seen as murderers and savages. They would never recover. He needed to move. He needed to warn someone, but his feet felt frozen to the floor. "What about security?" the first voice continued. "Handled. We have people inside the station's defense network. When the moment comes, there will be a gap in coverage. 30 seconds is all we need." "And Lady suspects nothing." "Nothing. She trusts too easily. That has always been her weakness." Danny heard movement inside the room and forced himself to walk away. His heart was pounding so hard he was certain everyone in the corridor could hear it. He made it around the corner and kept walking, faster and faster, until he was practically running. His mind raced as he moved. He should tell station security, but the HAD said they had people inside the defense network. He could not trust anyone. He should contact the delegation directly. But what proof did he have? Just words overheard in a corridor. Who would believe a human cargo handler over established diplomats? There was only one person he could tell, one person who might actually listen. Danny found Seraphine in her quarters reviewing documents for the afternoon session. She looked up when he entered and immediately noticed something was wrong. "You are pale," she observed, "even more than usual." "My lady, I need to speak with you privately." Seraphine raised one elegant eyebrow. She dismissed her other attendants with a wave of her hand and waited until the door closed behind them. "Speak." Danny told her everything. The voices in the storage room, the plan to attack during the final ceremony, the evidence that would be planted to blame humanity. He spoke quickly, his words tumbling over each other in his rush to get them out. When he finished, he stood there breathing hard, waiting for her response. Seraphine was silent for a long time. Her crimson eyes studied him with that same searching look she had given him on the first day. "You overheard conspirators planning my assassination," she said slowly. "And instead of using this information to free yourself, instead of staying silent and letting events unfold, you came to warn me." "Yes. I have held your life in my hands for 18 days. I have threatened you, frightened you, and treated you as property. Many would say that allowing my death would be justice." Danny shook his head. "That is not justice. That is just revenge. And letting someone die when I could stop it would make me something less than human. Even if that someone is a monster who feeds on the living. You have not fed on me yet, and you have treated me fairly. Maybe you are a monster to others, but to me, you have just been a difficult employer." Seraphine made that sound that was almost a laugh, but her eyes remained serious. "You understand that I cannot simply act on your word alone. If I accuse the without proof, it will destroy the peace negotiations. Everything I have worked for will be lost." "I know," Danny said, "but I could not stay silent. Whatever happens next, at least you will not be surprised when it comes." Seraphine rose from her seat and walked to the window that looked out over the station. The stars beyond were cold and distant. Why do you care what happens to me, human? I am nothing to you. Your species is nothing to mine. In the vast scale of the galaxy, we are strangers passing in the night. Danny thought about the question. He had asked himself the same thing on the walk here. Because right and wrong do not change based on who is involved, he said finally. My mother taught me that when I was young. If something is wrong, it is wrong whether it happens to a friend or an enemy. And killing someone through betrayal is wrong. It does not matter if you are or human. It is just wrong. Seraphine turned to look at him. For the first time since he had met her, something in her expression shifted. The cold superiority that she always wore like armor seemed to crack, just a little. Behind it, he glimpsed something older and sadder. Your mother sounds like a wise woman. She is. I hope to introduce you someday. You assume you will survive that long. I assume nothing, but hope is free. Seraphine was quiet for another long moment. Then she nodded, a decision made. I will take precautions, quietly so as not to alert the conspirators, and I will watch for signs of what you have described. If you are wrong, nothing will be lost. If you are right, then you may have just saved many lives, including your own. Thank you for believing me. I did not say I believe you. I said I will watch. She paused. But for what it is worth, human, I think you may be the most honest creature I have encountered in 800 years. Danny did not know what to say to that, so he simply bowed his head and returned to his duties. The next few days would tell whether his warning had been enough. The final ceremony was held in the Grand Hall of Nexus Station. It was the largest space on the entire structure, a massive chamber with windows that showed the endless stars beyond. Hundreds of diplomats, merchants, and observers had gathered to witness the signing of the peace treaty between the Collective and the Federation. Danny stood at the edge of the crowd, watching everything with nervous eyes. 3 days had passed since he had warned Seraphine. She had said nothing more about it, had given no sign that she had taken any precautions. But Danny noticed small things. The way her personal guards had doubled, the way she positioned herself near exits, the way her eyes constantly scanned the room. She believed him, or at least she believed him enough to be careful. The ceremony proceeded smoothly at first. Speeches were given about peace and cooperation and the bright future that awaited both species. The High Ambassador spoke of putting old conflicts behind them. Seraphine spoke of building bridges instead of walls. The crowd applauded at all the right moments. Then the lights went out. For exactly 3 seconds, the Grand Hall was plunged into complete darkness. When the lights returned, chaos had already begun. Soldiers in black armor emerged from hidden positions throughout the hall. They moved with deadly precision, cutting off exits and surrounding the delegation. At the center of it all stood the High Ambassador, a weapon in his hand and a cold smile on his face. "Lady," he announced, his voice carrying through the suddenly silent hall, "you have been found guilty of crimes against the Federation. The sentence is death." Seraphine did not seem surprised. She stood calmly among her guards, her crimson eyes fixed on the ambassador. "You would murder me at a peace ceremony," she said, "in front of hundreds of witnesses." "There will be no witnesses. Only survivors who will tell the story we want them to tell. A story about human terrorists who attacked this gathering and killed a leader. Your death will end any hope of your species making peace with ours, and it will destroy the humans at the same time." Danny watched from his position near the wall. His heart was racing, but his mind was strangely calm. The exits were blocked. The soldiers outnumbered the guards 3-1. This was not a fight that could be won through strength. But perhaps it could be survived through chaos. Danny spotted a fire alarm panel on the wall behind him. If he could reach it, if he could trigger the emergency systems, the station's automated response would flood the hall with security drones and emergency personnel. It would not stop the attack, but it would bring help. It would bring witnesses that they could not silence. He started moving along the wall, staying low, trying not to draw attention. A soldier noticed him and raised a weapon. Danny froze. "Where do you think you are going, human?" the soldier asked. "Nowhere," Danny said. "I was just trying to get away from the fighting." The soldier laughed. "There will be no getting away. When this is over, your kind will be blamed for everything. Enjoy your last moments." The soldier turned back to watch the confrontation between Seraphine and the ambassador. Danny kept moving. He was 10 feet from the alarm when the fighting started for real. Seraphine moved faster than any living thing Danny had ever seen. She was among the soldiers before they could react, her hands striking with deadly precision. Her guards followed her lead, engaging the enemy with weapons and claws and teeth. The Grand Hall became a battlefield. Diplomats screamed and ran for cover. Bodies fell on both sides. Danny heard the sound of energy weapons and the wet impact of close combat. He blocked it all out and focused on the alarm panel. 8 feet, 6 feet, 4 feet. A soldier appeared in front of him, weapon raised. There was no time to think. Danny grabbed a metal chair from a nearby table and swung it with all his strength. The chair connected with the soldier's helmet and the soldier stumbled back. Danny swung again and again, putting everything he had into each blow. The soldier recovered and struck Danny hard in the ribs. Pain exploded through his body. He felt something crack, but he did not stop. He could not stop. Everything depended on reaching that alarm. He swung the chair one more time. This time the soldier caught it and twisted it from his hands. Danny was thrown to the ground. The soldier stood over him, weapon aimed at his head. "Stupid human," the soldier said. "Did you really think you could fight us?" Danny looked up at the weapon pointed at his face. He thought about his family back on Earth. He thought about his mother and her lessons about right and wrong. He thought about Seraphine and the strange connection they had built over the past 3 weeks. Then he kicked upward with both legs, hitting the soldier in the knees. The soldier buckled and Danny scrambled to his feet. He was bleeding now from cuts he did not remember receiving. His ribs screamed with every breath. But the alarm panel was right there. He reached for it. The soldier grabbed his ankle and pulled him down. Danny hit the floor hard, the impact driving the air from his lungs. He tried to crawl forward, but the soldier was on top of him now, hands around his throat. Danny could not breathe. His vision was going dark at the edges. The alarm was so close, so close. Then the weight was gone. Danny gasped for air and looked up to see Seraphine standing over the fallen soldier. Her robes were torn and stained with blood that was not hers. Her eyes blazed like red fire. "The alarm," Danny managed to say. "Trigger it." Seraphine turned and struck the panel with her fist. Alarms blared throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed. Within seconds, the sound of security drones filled the air. The soldiers looked around in confusion. Their perfect plan was falling apart. Witnesses were everywhere now. Station security was pouring into the hall. There would be no blaming this on humans. There would be no silencing what had happened here. The ambassador tried to flee, but Seraphine caught him before he reached the door. She did not kill him. She simply held him there, her hand around his throat, until security arrived to take him away. Danny lay on the floor, watching it all through blurring vision. Someone was calling for medical help. Someone else was applying pressure to wounds he could not feel anymore. The last thing he saw before he lost consciousness was Seraphine kneeling beside him. Her crimson eyes filled with something he had never seen there before. Concern, real, genuine concern. For him. Danny woke up in a medical bay 3 days after the attack. The lights were soft and the air smelled like antiseptic. For a long moment, he did not remember where he was or what had happened. Then the memories came flooding back and he tried to sit up. Pain shot through his body and he fell back against the bed. A medical drone floated over and scanned him with blue light. "Patient is awake," the drone announced. Injuries include 4 broken ribs, a punctured lung, multiple lacerations, and severe bruising. Patient is advised to remain still. Danny had no intention of doing anything else. Every breath hurt. Every small movement sent waves of agony through his chest. He had never felt so broken in his entire life. The door to the medical bay opened and Seraphine walked in. She looked different than he remembered. Her dark robes were gone, replaced by something simpler and lighter. Her pale face seemed less cold somehow, less distant. "You are awake," she said. "The doctors were not certain you would survive." "Takes more than a few soldiers to kill me," Danny managed to say. His voice was rough and weak. "Indeed it does." Seraphine pulled a chair close to his bed and sat down. "You fought a trained soldier with a metal chair. You kept getting up after being struck down. You crawled toward that alarm even as you were being strangled. The security footage has spread across the entire station. Half the galaxy has seen what you did." Danny closed his eyes. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like a man who had made a series of desperate choices and somehow lived through them. "The conspiracy has been exposed," Seraphine continued. "The ambassador and his followers have been arrested. Evidence of their plot was found in their communications. The peace treaty will still be signed, though with different representatives. And humanity's reputation has changed overnight." "Changed how?" "Before this, humans were seen as a minor species, unremarkable, forgettable. Now they are seen as something else entirely. A cargo handler with no weapons, no training, and no special abilities fought to protect aliens who had nothing to do with his species. He was willing to die not for his own people, but for strangers. The galaxy is asking what kind of species produces individuals like that." Danny opened his eyes and looked at her. "I was not trying to make a statement. I was just trying to do the right thing." "That is precisely what makes it so impressive." Seraphine reached into her robe and produced a small crystal. It glowed with an inner light that pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. "This is an honor stone," she said. "They are given to those who have performed great service to our people. In 800 years I have given exactly 2 of them. You will be the 3rd. Danny stared at the crystal. "I do not deserve that. I just hit a fire alarm." "You warned me of the attack when you had nothing to gain. You fought when you could have hidden. You suffered wounds that should have killed you in order to save lives that were not your own. If that does not deserve honor, then nothing does." She placed the crystal on the table beside his bed. Danny looked at it for a long moment, then looked back at her. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now you heal. The doctors say it will take several weeks before you can return to work. Human medicine combined with healing techniques has saved your life, but recovery will be slow." "And after that?" Seraphine was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer than he had ever heard it. "After that, I have a proposal for you. The collective wishes to establish formal relations with humanity. We need a liaison, someone who understands both species, someone who has proven they can be trusted. I would like that liaison to be you." Danny blinked. "Me, I am a cargo handler." "You were a cargo handler. Now you are the human who earned the respect of the. The position comes with significant compensation, opportunities to travel throughout the galaxy, and the chance to help your species build a place in the larger community. It also means you would be working with me directly." "You want me to keep being your servant?" "No." Seraphine's crimson eyes met his. "I want you to be my partner, an equal, someone I can trust to tell me the truth even when I do not want to hear it. In 8 centuries of existence, I have found very few beings who possess that quality. I do not intend to let this one go." Danny thought about the offer. A month ago, he had been nobody, a cargo handler sending money home and dreaming of nothing bigger. Now he was being offered a chance to represent his entire species, to work alongside beings who had lived for centuries, to make a difference on a galactic scale. It was terrifying. It was overwhelming. It was exactly the kind of thing he had never imagined for himself. "I need to contact my family," he said finally. "They will want to know what has happened, and I will need to think about this." "Of course, take all the time you need." Seraphine rose from her chair. "But Danny, I want you to know something. When I asked you on that first day if you wished to die, I was testing you. I wanted to see what kind of creature you were. Most would have begged or lied or run. You apologized and offered to make things right. In that moment, you showed me more about humanity than all the diplomatic reports I had ever read." She moved toward the door, then paused. "There were once like humans, you know. Long ago, before we changed, before we became predators, we were a species that cared for others, that built communities, that found strength in connection rather than isolation. We lost that part of ourselves somewhere along the way. Perhaps your kind will remind the galaxy of things that should not be forgotten." She left without waiting for a response. Danny lay in the medical bay and stared at the honor stone on his table. Its light pulsed steadily, like a second heartbeat keeping time with his own. He thought about his mother and her lessons about right and wrong. He thought about the corridor where everything had begun, a spilled drink and a question that had changed his life forever. "Do you wish to die human?" "No," Danny thought. "I wish to live. I wish to matter. I wish to be remembered for something more than the mistakes I made." He reached out and wrapped his fingers around the honor stone. It was warm against his skin, warm like the hope growing in his chest. Tomorrow he would call his family. Tomorrow he would start planning for a future he had never imagined. But tonight he would rest. He had earned that much. And somewhere across the galaxy, in the cold halls of the stories, were already being told about the human who answered a death threat with an apology and changed everything that came after. Danny Cole, a name the universe would remember.